Before we turn it over to our guest presenter, I would like to introduce our Flower Bluff team here with us tonight. First of all, we have Mrs. Velma Solis Garcia, our superintendent.
Good evening.
We have Dr. Borgansky, Associate Superintendent for Student Services.
Good evening. Glad to have everyone here tonight.
We have Edgar Van Geen, Special Education Director.
Hello, everyone.
We have Dr. Melanie Shandy, Assistant Director of Special Education.
Hello, everyone.
We have Kristen Sandiford, our Special Education Counselor.
Hello.
We have Rose Ford, our Special Education Counselor.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
We have Erica Mora from the ECC. She's our campus counselor there.
Good evening.
We have Cindy Blackstone from the primary campus.
Hi.
We have Veronica Vidal from the elementary campus.
Hello.
Brian Schultz from the intermediate campus.
Good evening, everyone.
We have Jackie Schuster from the junior high. We have Sandra DeLeon from the junior high. She's the 8th grade counselor.
Everyone.
We have Lauren Smith from the high school.
Hello, so glad you're here tonight.
Julie Burnett from the high school, and she's our LPC.
Hi, everyone.
We have Kathy Keller, and she's also a high school counselor. And we have Tina Watson. She's another high school counselor. Tina?
Hi, we're glad to have y'all with us.
We also have Sandra Martinez, and she's with our community in schools, and so she does help us out in our district as well. And then also I'd like to give a big thanks to Alex Fuente and Kim Sneed. They've really kind of helped put this together as well. Okay, so at the end of our presentation, our counselors and our presenter will be available to answer your questions. So at this time, I would like to turn your attention to welcome our speaker, Dr. Lang Pethick. He is a behavior and autism spectrum disorder consultant at the Education Service Center in Region 10. So at this time, we will turn it over to Dr. Pethick.
Well, good evening. Yeah, this is great. I have to tell you, I've done so many of these evening sessions with parents. It's become like a regular part of my job, and it's probably one of the favorite parts I've had in the last year, almost to the day. We were just talking today with some people with the state, and I found out today that with your group, depending on how many you get, it will push me over the 10,500 mark for parents I've talked to and trained in about 10 months. So parents are near and dear to my heart. Anything I can do ever to help parents is always a plus. So without further ado, I'm going to try the technology out and share my screen with everybody. I hope that works for you. I will tell you a little caveat. Once this is up like it is now, I can't see any of you anymore. So now it's just me talking to my screen, which kind of gives me a complex. I've been doing it so much. But I will tell you I have some videos, and there's a caveat to videos when you're doing Zoom. They don't always work. So for the video or two I might have, pretty much 85% of the time it works for a majority of the people, but sometimes depending on what type of technology you're using, it may not always be the case. So if I get to the video part and you can't hear it or see it, just bear with me. They're not that long, and we'll jump right back in and catch you up. So when I get asked this last year, what are the biggest topics with parents, teachers, and basically all adults and kids, it's the extra stress and trauma that we're dealing with. There has been a lot of extra stress and trauma in our lives. Some people in some areas have been hit harder than others. But what I try to get people to do is I'm going to share with you kind of what that extra stress and trauma is doing to us and our kids, but not just share it with you, but then talk to you about what can we do? What can we do not just for our kids, but ourselves? I tell parents and educators and all adults alike, you are only as good for your kids as you are for yourself. And if you're not taking care of yourself and you're not taking care of you, you're no good to our kids. And there's a lot of adults I've been working with this last year that really are struggling a lot with a lot of issues that are going on. So without further ado, I'll get into it. As I talk, you'll probably hear more about my background, but one of my favorite things that I tell people is my background is all about the brain, the neurological factors that help us learn. How does the brain learn best? How does the brain behave? How does the brain form behaviors? It's not necessarily a label. I work with lots of kids with autism, lots of kids with different disabilities, but I don't look at it as a label. I look at it as how does their brain work for them? And so one of my favorite things is this particular quote that health does not always come from medicine. Most of the time it comes from peace of mind, peace in the heart, peace in our soul, and it comes from laughter and love. And we're going to talk about some very big things that you as parents, educators, anybody can do, not just for yourselves, but for our kids. And I always tell people all of my interventions for all of our kids, they don't cost a dime, they just cost you some time. And that's kind of where I run my life is it's the time we give versus the money we spend. And so a lot of the interventions I'm going to share with you tonight, they are easy to do at home. They're easy to do at schools. They're easy to do in the community. And it doesn't take a lot of effort. It's just the time we put into it. So with a big welcome, I always have people always ask about my background and to see if I'm truly qualified for this. And so I'll tell people I've been in this education world for 27 years. I'm on my 27th year. It's kind of hard to believe. I started 27 years ago as a pre-K kindergarten teacher. That was a blast. I had the best time. After I did pre-K and K, I went into special ed. After special ed, I got to be a principal. After being a principal, I got to go into special ed again, but as an assistant director. And then I was a professor at several different universities around the country. And I landed back here in the Dallas area to a job I probably love more than any other job, because my job now is going out to schools every day, working in classrooms with teachers, trying to help figure out the things we can do to make our kids' lives better. And that's it. And I work with lots of parents. I work with parent groups. I work at community groups. Probably one of the best jobs I've had. And so I'll share lots of things with you. And so what I want to start with is one of my favorites. In the times we're in, and let me tell you, there is stress everywhere and there is trauma everywhere. And we've had a lot of issues this last year that we weren't expecting. A year from now, none of us would have guessed this was going to happen to us. But the problem I have to tell people is as much as I feel for the adults in this, it's the kids I'm worried about the most. Because what a lot of people don't understand is all that extra stress and trauma we feel as adults, it automatically gets pushed down to our children. Our children are on the bottom rung of the stress pyramid. At the top, we have our administration, our middle administration, school principals, everybody else, teachers, parents. But then at the bottom of the stress pyramid lay our kids. And if we, the adults, don't learn how to protect our kids from the stress better, that stress is getting in there. And I'm going to tell you what, it is hitting some of our kids pretty hard. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you one of my favorite interventions. It is a tried and true intervention. It is research to the teeth with the brain research, and it's called laughter. And I'm going to tell you right now, this world needs a whole lot more laughter, especially this country. Our own country needs to laugh more. Our schools need to spend more time laughing with kids. It's an interesting thing to look at the research in laughter. And a lot of people don't realize there's actual research out there. So humor and laughter are an absolute must in our lives. When we make other human beings laugh, when you make a child laugh, not only do they take in a huge amount of oxygen, more than they'll ever take in at any other time. It's even more than when you yawn. When you go to laugh, you take in a huge amount of oxygen. What that oxygen does, it hits your brain. As soon as it hits your brain, that's the first place it goes. It goes up into your brain. And as soon as it hits your brain, it's like a 5-hour energy shot. It just wakes up your brain like crazy. And so now your brain is up and awake. But now those people who are with me are making me laugh. And the thing about laughter in a human being is it releases a chemical cocktail. It's the most amazing chemical cocktail our bodies can create. It's got a mixture of dopamine, adrenaline, norepinephrine, all these chemicals. And what happens is this chemical cocktail mixes together and goes to our brain also. When it hits our brain, it actually floods our brain and it allows it to actually calm down. And what it actually does is this frontal lobe, this front part of our brain that we need for learning and understanding and reasoning, it actually opens it wide open. So for my educators here and for my parents, when you're going to teach our kids something new, or when you're just going to go teach them something or reteach something, if you make them laugh before you teach them, it is actually one of the best interventions to get the learning process going. So make them laugh, 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 laugh. It's got such healing power. And laughter, we found, isn't just mentally healthy for human beings. It's also physically healthy for us. And so laughter has such a powerful pull to it. I'm going to date myself. Back when I was back home in Canada growing up, I'd go to my grandparents' farms and help them on the farms. And 4 o'clock in the morning, Grandpa wakes me up to go do these chores. Was that typical kid who begrudgingly got up and sat at the kitchen table with Grandpa, and Grandpa got to drink coffee. I did not. I got this thing called the Reader's Digest slid across in front of my face, and I'd open it up to this thing called Laughter, the Best Medicine. I don't know if any of you remember Laughter, the Best Medicine, but I would read it and I would chuckle and I would laugh. And I never understood, why did you pick this title? As I grew up, as I got somewhat more educated, I found out why. Laughter truly is the best medicine. And it's one of the best medicinal things we have going, but we are not using it near enough. I will say in the world, we're relying more on the pharmaceutical medicine rather than the internal medicine for our kids. And so some of the things to do is to look at this. So I have a video. It's coming up next on the next slide. I will truly apologize for those of you who can't see it, because it is one of the best videos I show to show you how powerful laughter is. So if things go blank and you can't hear anything for a couple minutes, we're still here. Don't go anywhere. Just go get some coffee or some snacks or whatever it is you can do. So without further ado, here we go.
People ask me all the time, Michael, what was your big break?
Our next guest has performed on Comedy Central's Premium Blend.
He made his first appearance on The Tonight Show from the Montreal Comedy Festival.
You've seen him on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
That wasn't the big break. The big break was at a club. And right before I got on stage, I had a change in mindset about comedy. Normally when a comedian gets on stage, he wants to get laughs from people. And I felt a little shift take place, where I felt like I was to go up there and give them an opportunity to laugh. Now I'm not looking to take, I'm looking for an opportunity to give. This changed everything. My name is Michael Jr. I'm gonna do some jokes. And ultrasounds come in color now, which is ridiculous. I know it's a black baby. It better be a black baby. I leave the club that night, and there's all these people giving me hugs and high fives, telling me their favorite jokes. Then I look across the street, and I saw a homeless guy. And I thought to myself, what about him? Most comedy, most jokes are set up. My son, 4 years old, looks at me out of nowhere. He says, Dad, I want to be a doctor. I was like, yes, yes. And then a punchline. Then he said, or a dinosaur. I understand that me doing comedy and doing all of these TV shows and making all these people laugh is really just a setup. My punchline is to make laughter commonplace in uncommon places. We go to Montrose, Colorado, a place called the Dolphin House. They take care of children who have been abused by their parents. And this grandmother explains to me that her grandson is being abused by his mom. He's so afraid of his mom that everywhere he goes, he wears a Spider-Man costume. So I get on stage, sitting right up front, Spider-Man. I start doing comedy. People start laughing, slowly but surely. Probably about 25 minutes into it, I hear a voice, and the voice says, my name is Ronan. And this little boy pulls off his mask. And it was one of the most powerful moments in my entire comedy career. If we could just stop asking the question, what could I get for myself? And start asking the question, what can I give from myself? I think people would learn that you don't have to be a comedian to deliver a punchline.
And so as you can see how powerful laughter can be for our kiddos, for ourselves, just for, like I said, not just our mental health, but for our physical health too. And so there's the first intervention I share with you tonight. Laugh. The more you laugh, the healthier you can be. So real quick, so I have to give you a caveat to this. I always have too much stuff to share, and I go through it as quick as I can. And sometimes people want more information on certain things and everything else. And so what I'm going to let you guys know ahead of time is everything I have here tonight, I will PDF it and send it. And so parents, educators, counselors, whoever's here tonight, you can have everything I have. I just tell people the only caveat I have for giving people all my stuff is that you share it with someone else who may need to know it. And just use it as best you can for yourselves too. So no worries about trying to take notes if you're taking notes or freaking out if you miss something. I'm more than happy to give parents, teachers, everybody, everything I got. So real quick, I had to put this in here. Social emotional learning, now more than ever, is vital to our schools. I don't know if I can stress this enough. When I got to Texas 27 years ago, I have to admit, I was kind of appalled. There was no such thing as social emotional learning. And so there's been a handful of us screaming for a lot of years, we need social emotional learning in our schools. It's an integral part of education and human beings. And now it's finally coming around, and we're really hearing a lot about it lately with COVID, with the trauma, with a lot of the kind of the horrific things that have been happening to a lot of our people out there. This is more important than ever. And I'm finding out right now, and I'm just being honest with you because it's kind of who I am. It isn't just our kids that need it. Well, I have a lot of adults that struggle with coping mechanisms, self-regulation skills, and things like that. And it's important for our adults too. And social emotional learning is real simple. It's just that process through which we get the skills and attitudes that help us with not only who we are, but how we manage our emotions, how we achieve goals in life, how we feel towards others, how we develop relationships and maintain relationships, and how we make just good decisions for ourselves. And so I put Castle as one of my favorite websites for social emotional learning. This is their new definition. And so I just put it up here for y'all to have. With the brain research that I've done and I continue to do, social emotional learning, I can't stress this enough in the education world. You want our kiddos to be the best learners possible, to learn the academic information, to learn those TEAC objectives we got to teach. Social emotional learning is literally about 80% of that learning process. And if I'm lacking in the social emotional, my learning and cognitive abilities are going to suffer. And so with all the research we've been doing in the brain and how the brain learns and how the brain behaves, emotional well-being and my ability to be social is a huge foundation to which I build my learning skills on. And so it's an interesting thing I tell people. I call it the 80-20 rule. 80% of a human being's success comes from my social emotional side. 20% comes from the knowledge-based or the academics-based. I'm not saying academics aren't important, but I'm saying there's 80% of how we are as human beings come from that social emotional side, that brain development and everything else. And so one of my favorite quotes I tell people is, I can succeed in school and fail in life, or I can fail in school and succeed in life. And I bet all of us in here know people that fall into both these categories. And so it's that social emotional thing that I also give to parents. Help your kids cope, help them regulate. When there's stress in your life and stress in your world, not only you about coping, how do you help your kids cope with it also? And we're going to talk about some things you can do that are real simple and easy tonight. So these are the things we're going to talk about. What versus why, the big three: movement and exercise, one of my favorite topics, and connection and belonging. And so I always put what versus why, because here's what I tell people. We're always told what to do, but it's better if you know why first. Why am I doing this rather than just do this? You know, hey, read to your child for 20 minutes. Well, that's what you're supposed to do, but you know why you're supposed to do it. Because the other thing about brain research that we know is you can't really just tell the human brain what to do without backing it up with the why. The human brain does not fully buy into something until you have the why that's behind it. You know, why am I doing this? Why is this good for my child? Why is this good for our kids in school? You know, why is this program fantastic? these are the things that we got to answer. So we're going to look at some basic whys tonight before we get into the what to do about it. And so with all I got in me and everything I got, it's been a very long day. Like I'm sure we've all been through it. I've been actually kind of in and out of a school. They have about 7 teachers down due to COVID. And one of them is the behavior person. And so I volunteered to go in and work with the kids the last couple of days. So it's been fun, but woo, you get a little bit tired, which is why I have coffee. So feel free to take a coffee break or a restroom break whenever you need it, because I can't see you anyways. So here it is real quick. And I put a lot of stuff in here. I'm just going to go through it fast. I'm stressed out. I have a lot of stress in my life. And this is important for parents to understand. Parents, if you don't understand how stress is affecting you, it's really hard for you to understand how it's going to affect your kids. And so this first part is, I'm stressed out. What happens? And stress is like a chain reaction in our bodies. And so let's say you're running late for work and you got this stress and it's that stressful event. What happens is this little thing in your brain called the amygdala. It resenses that there's something going on and it sends a distress signal to this hypothalamus, which is in the middle of your brain. Yeah, there's no test on this, so don't worry about, remembering this stuff. But this hypothalamus, this little part of your brain will rocket off. It's like a big command center. And it will just shoot out information throughout your whole body through the nervous system that, hey, something's not right. And it gets your body ramped up for fight or flight or freeze. But that's a bit of a different one. And so as soon as your brain detects any sort of stress, you go into fight or flight mode. Not much you can do about it. Fight or flight mode, outwardly what you'll see and what you will feel is your heart rate starts to increase. Your senses will get heightened. You'll actually smell better and hear better. Not smell better personally, but your sense of smell will be better. You'll take in more oxygen, which is sometimes when people get really stressed out, they start to hyperventilate because their body starts trying to take in more oxygen than they're able to get going, and it can cause them to hyperventilate. You get a rush of adrenaline. Your kidneys get involved. So your kidneys get the signal that they're stressed, and the adrenal glands on your kidneys shoot off a bunch of adrenaline into your body. Parents out there, have you ever had an episode with your kids where you're just so upset and stressed out that you shake and you can't stop shaking afterwards? That's that release of adrenaline and cortisol, and that's what it does to your system. It ramps your system up and gives your system energy to ward off whatever this stress might be. And so cortisol, which is the stress hormone, adds to the adrenaline, because cortisol, what it does is it helps restore lost energy. Cortisol is like a 5-hour energy shot to our body. And that's good sometimes. Like I tell people, stress itself is not necessarily a problem. It's constant stress. If you can't get out of stress and you sit in stress and you're always stressed out, that buildup of cortisol actually starts having a long-term effect on your physical health, but also your brain health. And so that's where we call it toxic stress. That's where we can't get rid of it. It's always there. And I have lots of families, so many families, and I cannot lie. There's been episodes and times this last year that I myself have been struggling with the stress issues and having to deal with extra things that we just weren't ready for. And when you know what's happening to you, you're better able to readjust yourself to it. But when you don't know and you're just stressed out, and you don't realize what's happening to your brain and body, it's hard to realize how to get it back under lock and key and get it back on track. And so that's why I'm sharing this with you. It isn't just so you understand your kids better, it's also so you understand you better. And so the brain stress and COVID-19, we've had a lot of extra stress in our lives, a lot of extra trauma, which is high stress issues. And so that cortisol, which in moderation is usually healthy, it helps us regulate all kinds of things in our body, has shot through the roof for a lot of people. And what it does is it literally will wear down your brain's ability to function. So chronic stress and that extra cortisol, it disrupts a lot of things in your brain. People tend to get less sociable. They tend to draw away from people. But here's the thing though, when you're in constant stress and you're stressing out and you can't get yourself calmed down and your kids are stressing out, that extra stress, if you sit in it long enough, actually will start to kill brain cells, and it actually can start reducing the size of your brain. And so the part of the brain that it reduces, though, is the prefrontal cortex, or the frontal lobe, which is the very part of the brain that we use to basically learn, reason, understand, process, regulate our emotions, regulate our behaviors, memory, learning, all that stuff. And so it's really interesting. The area that it affects the most is the area we need the most. And so that's why understanding what stress does to us is really important. The amygdala, that little stress area of our brain, it's kind of like when you work out your muscles, you go to the gym to get bigger muscles. Well, if you're constantly under stress, your amygdala gets bigger and bigger too, which means it's more receptive to stress. And so I have lots of people now who are dealing with anxiety issues, panic attacks, and everything else because of that ability to perceive stress more. And actually what they tend to do is they'll start perceiving stress where stress doesn't exist. So it's an interesting thing to look at. And what happens is the cortisol, all that stuff, it takes that emotional side of your brain and it hardwires it to your memories. So now everything you're learning and all the memories you're taking in and all the things you're seeing and all the things you're dealing with every day, they don't get wired through the frontal lobe where you reason through, you think it through, you process it, and then you store it. It gets hardwired straight to the emotional side of your brain. So everything you're thinking and looking at has an emotional reaction to it with very little reasoning or logic. And so interestingly enough, if this cycle keeps going the way it does without intervention and help, without people, doing the things they needed to take care of themselves, this is where this path to anxiety disorders and also PTSD come in. And so it's an interesting thing to look at how our brain is so vital to us, but how stress can disrupt it so much. And our kids are getting their brains disrupted through stress a lot right now. So what I want to share with you is this. That's a bit about how all human being brains work with stress. It's a lot of stuff I threw at you. I always tell people, here's what I say to people. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to make you think about things. I want people to come out of my talks and my trainings and visiting with me, not being, oh, he told me to do this, this, and this. That's not it. I just want you to think about things more. Think about things deeper. Think about things that you can maybe go change tomorrow or tonight. After we're done talking, maybe there's something you'll hear tonight and say, hey, I can change that with my child and I with interactions tonight. But just do small things. Start small and build onto it. It's change is so hard for us as human beings. So, and that's part of that brain process also. And so what I want to share with you right now is for all of my parents, teachers, educators, even if you're parents, this goes for you too. But this also goes for our schools, our school districts, the current normal and how it can affect our kids. And when I look at our kids and I do trainings on children, I kind of split them off into two bigger categories. And so the first one is we're going to talk about is young children, birth to age 9. So this first category is all this extra stress and trauma that's going around the world and existing in our backyards and existing in our homes and our schools. This is how it is starting to affect some of our children. And this is birth to age 9. So for our kids birth to age 9, all this extra stress and all this other stuff actually starts affecting their hormone levels. And they end up getting higher blood pressure. Younger kids are getting higher blood pressure. It keeps the sugar stores and the cortisol levels elevated in their bodies. So they have these sugar stores and these cortisol levels that keep up. And remember, we just talked about what extra cortisol does to the brain. It can attack children's brains much quicker than it can attack adult brains. And so the glucose levels, this is a caveat, just read this the other day. A lot of our kids in our school systems who have diabetes are having a huge struggle this past year because that extra stress and extra trauma, their bodies are storing sugar and it's affecting those of our kiddos who are diabetic. It's making them sicker. We're seeing a lot more illnesses with them. For all of our kiddos who are not diabetic, it also does disrupt their immune systems and inflammatory systems, which means they can't fight off infections and illnesses as much. I, interestingly enough, have had lots of conversations with school nurses. I'm fortunate that here at Region 10, I cover 85 school districts and 72 charter schools. And I swear, I think I've been out to most of the districts already since August. And I see a lot of nurses, and the nurses are like, man, we got a lot of kids with just little things, headaches, stomach aches, just kind of achy, not feeling good. And that's part of what we're seeing is because their body, this extra stress and trauma and all this stuff going on with their hormone level changes because of that extra stress, they're not able to fight off some of the simplest things anymore. Everybody I hear is complaining about how bad their allergies are. The ironic part is if you look at the stats, allergies on average have not been as bad in the air this year, but a lot of us are suffering from that. We're not able to fight off some of that stuff as well as we could before. And so we're seeing a lot of kids going to the nurse's office more. We're seeing a lot more visits to the nurse's office for things like this. And so the sad thing is I have to share is we're seeing younger and younger kids at this age level exhibiting anxiety and depression characteristics. Things that we tend not to see later until later on, we're starting to see younger and younger, which is a big concern for a lot of us, for our kids. Probably not a topic a lot of people want to talk about, but I have to sit on it because part of my job too is I do crisis intervention, and the suicide rates and suicide attempts are up in our area. And I will share with you, the scary part is the last one I had to deal with was a 3rd grader. And so that we're seeing at a younger age also. And the 3rd grader, she attempted it. And what she told us afterwards was, I just can't take it anymore. All this stuff I hear about COVID, I'm scared everybody's going to die. I'm scared the whole world's just going to just not exist anymore. And then she put on top of that, the political stuff the country went through for many months. She was saddened and it really bothered her at how adults were acting in the country. And so she had this whole perfect storm of emotions and she just really kind of lost it. You know, it was a sad discussion to have with her, but it's kind of telling. We adults need to be a bit better at what we do around our kids. And so that's just some things with hormones, some other things with our young kids, birth to 9, neurological changes. So parents, I know I'm going through this quick, but when your kids are born from birth to age 3, so if anybody out there has a kiddo from birth to age 3, their brains are busier than they will ever be in their entire rest of their lives. By the time we hit 3 years, we have about 100 billion neurons in our brain. And what these neurons are for is they start making the connections for vision, hearing, other sensory input, language. But the biggest thing is higher cognitive functioning, that ability to start thinking and reasoning and learning and processing and analyzing. All of those neurons are set aside for those big areas for the developing brain. However, prolonged stress, and yes, parents, even if you have an infant, that stress is affecting your infant. The extra stress you might be carrying directly affects your infant child too. And so that prolonged stress and trauma can reduce those neurons. But the sad thing is if you have extra stress and trauma from birth to age 3, the neurons are getting reduced, but the part of the brain that's responsible for learning and reasoning and making those connections is the part that gets limited the most. So that extra stress and trauma truly has a detrimental effect on my cognitive ability or my ability to learn later on. And so these are the things to think about with our youngest of young kids. And that's how some of this extra stress we're seeing is affecting them. Adolescents, 10 to 19. I'm going to give you a moment now. This would be like our late elementary, middle school, high school, and early adults. Let's just give ourselves a moment to think about this group right now. You know, I've been a parent and I'm a parent again. And I've been through these age levels before and whoo, my favorite place to visit is middle schools. Oh, just standing in a hallway during transition time in a middle school, the things you hear, I don't need any other kind of reality TV. That's just perfect for me right there. And so in order for me to tell you about adolescence, it would literally take me about 20 nights just like this to do it thoroughly. The adolescent brain is fascinating and the things it's doing. And I got to tell you, our education system needs to be a little more adept at understanding the adolescent brain, because I'll share with you that adolescents probably need more support from adults than the younger kids do with where their brains are at, especially emotional wise. And so to cover everything about the adolescent brain would take forever. And adolescent is age 10 to 19. And I put 19 because that's around school age. Technically, adolescence runs 10 to 21. And so the three things I'm going to cover for you real quick before we jump in to a couple of other things before we get into some things you can do at home is losing it, highway repairs, and working but not working, which a lot of parents who have teenagers right now, you're like, yep, that's it. So losing it. So here's the thing. You know, a lot of people who work with our kids 10 to 19, that adolescent group, they're like, what were you thinking? You know, they sit there and think, man, did their brains just leave their head? The ironic part is this. Once you hit about 10 or 11 years old, your brain actually creates a massive amount of new brain cells. I'll give you a minute. That's a pause for reflection right there, parents. 10 and 11 years old, your kids are getting a whole new massive increase in brain cells. And you're probably thinking, well, why are they not using them? Well, here's the thing. These brain cells are actually set aside for developing the new skills to become a good adult. So that's my life skills. That's my taking care of myself skills. It's the basic living life reality skills that they're set aside for. It's not meant for the academic side of the world. It's meant for those skills I need to learn to become a good person, a productive person, to take care of myself. And so without proper stimulation and forgiving and caring adults around me, or if I have increased stress and trauma, these brain cells will actually go unused. And if they go unused long enough, they actually decay and go away. And what that does is if those new brain cells aren't being honed by adults around me on even things like doing my laundry, how to iron, how to cook for myself, how to clean myself, how to do all this important stuff that I'm going to need as an adult, the life skills. What happens is these skills will decay, and it doesn't mean I don't ever learn these life skills. It just extends it way out, way into my adulthood before I learn them. And I'm going to be honest with you all. There is this phenomenon in our society right now that actually proves this. A lot of parenting styles have changed over the last 15, 20 years. We have a lot more a parenting style that we call the helicopter parents, the smother mothers, the lawnmower parents, where you just mow a path out of the way for your kids, you're focused on their academics, and we'll take care of all the rest of the stress for your lives. Problem is those skills, they don't learn them. And it's actually a detriment because these skills, they don't get to hone in. And so when they become adult, they're supposed to be on their own, they aren't. Right now in society, more than ever, we have a lot of 20-somethings and 30-somethings still living at home with their parents. And a lot of them don't have some of these basic skills to survive in the world. They haven't learned them. And I might have been an A student, but it doesn't mean I got these skills to be able to make it out in the real world. The social emotional skills, the taking care of myself skills. Doesn't mean they're not going to get them. It's just that they come in later in life. And so we're seeing a lot of this too out in our society. Highway repairs. So myelination is a fancy scientific name that around age 12 or 13, your brain has made all these connections and all these learning synapses, and it got to protect it so you don't like short circuit or blow them out. And so it protects those synapses. They cover it. Your brain will grow a covering over it called a myelin sheath. It's kind of like in the wires in your house. If you look at the wires in your house, you have the wire in there, but you got that plastic coating around it. It's almost just like that in your brain. And what happens is it protects that so you don't ever lose that learning synapse. If learning synapses are not protected appropriately or properly, they can actually short circuit and take out a bunch of other synapses with them. Forgetfulness comes from that. And so, but what happens is this chemical called serotonin, which is what we need in our body that keeps cortisol at bay, the stress hormone. Serotonin offsets cortisol, and serotonin enhances our mood. Well, the problem is the process of protecting those synapses actually reduces our body's ability to create serotonin. And so then we experience lower moods, we're more irritable, and it's a lot in our teenage years where this is happening. And so this explains sometimes those moodiness you get from your teenagers on your preteens. They get kind of moody and they just kind of these low moods and everything. That's what's happening. It's really what their brain is doing and how the brain is changing that affects that. Working but not working. So that whole frontal cortex, that frontal lobe, that beautiful thing that we need to be strong thinkers, processors, what we need to put connections together, to have logic in life. And the most important part to me is to be able to maintain my behavior and my emotions. That frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex, goes under massive construction around age 13 and 14, all the way to 19 and beyond. And while it's under construction, our emotional brain actually takes over. And that's why you see a lot of our adolescents and our teenagers more emotional thinkers. They think with their emotion first, and you kind of got to reel them back in and calm them down and say, okay, no, this is what it is. And then help them process through. What I basically tell people is this, especially in the adolescent years, every adult that is around any adolescent, you're basically their surrogate frontal lobe. You're the person that's got to be the frontal lobe for that child. So when they start doing things they're not supposed to, you step in with your frontal lobe and teach them how to do it the right way so they can get those processes down. Ladies who are in the crowd tonight, I'm going to share a little caveat that you can use to wow your friends at a party. Brain research. Ladies, your frontal lobe, that important part of our brain we need to think, reason, process, understand, apply, regulate emotions and feelings. That frontal lobe, ladies, with you is usually matured and developed by age 20 to 23. For all the gentlemen with me here tonight, we're going to break this in. We're going to just break this to you slowly. For all the gentlemen, recent brain research shows your frontal lobe is not fully mature and intact until 30 to 33. And so there's that discrepancy about a lot of these skill sets that women just tend to develop so much quicker than men, and so much quicker in life than men. So it's interesting stuff. So one of my favorite topics lately is we are what we eat. I'm going to guarantee you my diet has changed over the COVID time. COVID-19 has done a world of hurt to most of our diets. What we're doing now, and Duke University is one of the best ones for this, but I'm going to share this with you. We are what we eat. Everything you eat goes directly into your stomach, which is actually your second brain. All the foods you eat go directly into your stomach, get processed. All the chemicals and all the things that get processed out of that food actually go directly to your brain first. And the part of your brain it goes to first is the part of your brain that houses your behavior and your emotions. And so literally I tell people all the worst foods are high sugar foods and processed foods. The chemicals that your body extracts out of those foods hits your brain first, usually within 10 to 15 minutes of eating. The chemicals get fed up to your brain through your vagus nerve. They hit your brain, but they hit the emotional part of your brain first. And we see a lot of our kids, especially a lot of our kids that we worked with autism, who really struggle sometimes with their diets. Once we've rearranged their diets, the behavior and the emotional things level out the quickest. Ladies and gentlemen, I hate to break it to you, but everything you eat has a direct effect on your brain. It's called the gut-brain axis. Duke University's got some of the best research on this right now, if you ever care to look it up. And it goes for all of us. Exactly. Everything you eat has a direct effect, and it affects your behavior and your emotions first. So diets can be a big issue for extra stress, just behavior outbursts, impulsivity, just my emotional side of my world. And so that's something that I always talk to parents about when I talk to them too. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a whole nother research topic and a whole nother topic to get into. It's called screen time in the brain. And now that we have virtually everything, I mean, everything's virtual. The whole world's virtual now because of COVID, which is not helping the screen time in the brain. I put this in here because parents, if you're ever interested, I've been working with a lot of people back home in Canada for the last 10 years. We've been doing research on this for the last 10 years on screen time and its effect on the brain. I have to break it to everybody. Screen time is not good for our brains at all, especially if I'm a young child. Birth to 3 it is detrimental. From 3 to 6, you minimize it as much as you can. And then from 6 till the day we pass on in life, which means all the way through adulthood, any more than 2 hours a day will have a direct effect on a lot of things in our brain. Which is what I tell people. I'm not saying technology it's neither good nor bad. It all depends on how we use it. And overuse has been very detrimental to brain development, the social emotional growth, behavior regulation, the cognitive abilities of our brain, and everything else. So I put this up here because it's just a topic I think parents need to do more research on. And now our hands are tied, because if I have my child at home doing virtual learning, which I did have, it's a tough go because I need them to be there for school. I need them to be there, to be online to learn. But that adds extra screen time to their day. I don't have time tonight, but there's a whole nother training I do for parents on this about ideas for at home with the extra screen time and exactly what it does. However, I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it is an addiction. It's probably one of the strongest addictions we have on the planet right now. One of the things we found is there was a study done where they did brain scans of heroin and cocaine addicts and compared it to brain scans of middle and high school kids who are addicted to their phones and to screens, and the same areas of the brain are affected. I will also tell you, if you decide to cut your kids cold turkey on the screen, they're going to go through withdrawal symptoms similar to what someone on hardcore drugs are going to go through. We've literally had kids sweat, shake, get sick, have to go to the hospital because the addiction gets that bad with the screen. They tend to outsource their emotions and behaviors to these things. It's an interesting thing to look at. I know I don't have much time, but what I did is I put some studies in there for you guys to look at. If you're interested, you can look them up and read a bit about them. I have a lot of information. If you are interested in this, I have a lot of things I can share with you that we've done over the last 10 years. So just let me know. Feel free to reach out and contact me if you like. This was one last study. I just read it like literally a few months ago. And it's about how it affects language and thinking abilities of children and that cognitive side of the brain. We've always thought that technology has been such an additive to the learning process, and it can be. Don't get me wrong. Technology can be a great support to the learning process, but if it's overused, it can actually become the biggest detriment to the learning process. For my educators in here, the area that technology affects the most, has the biggest detriment on, is literacy skills. So interestingly enough, that's just some information that we have. I just wanted to bring it up so it's something you can talk about and think about. I always encourage people, go do your own research, take a look. But I have a lot of stuff I can share with y'all also. So I just wanted to put that in there because it's something else to watch. Because some of the things I'm going to talk to you about what to do tonight will help offset some of these screen time issues you might be running into also. I had to put this in here. I laughed. I saw this the other day and I said, I got to share it. How many of you remember a phone like that? My parents, man, I thought we were living high on the hog when my parents got the extra long cord that I could walk around the corner and talk to my friends on. And it's interesting, but when the phone was tied with a wire, we were actually free, because now they're not tied with a wire. And it's like we're almost in jail with these things now. We can't get away from them. They got us locked down. And so that's interesting how that works. So I'm finally getting to the great stuff. I hope I didn't bore you too much with that brain stuff, but I'm telling you, if I can just get some people on here tonight just to understand how our brain works a little bit better, it helps us look at our kids differently too. Parents, man, just to understand your kids' brains is such a great thing for you guys to do. And so, yes, some not so good information, some things we got to watch out for, some things we struggle with. We've had a lot of happenings in our lives lately. So what do we do? How do we do this better? How do we take care of ourselves? And so I'm going to share with you some of the best ways that you can build strong brains and strong kids. And by the way, this is also good for all the adults in this room too. So without further ado, here we go. The big three, one of my favorite topics. These in the brain science world, in the brain and learning world, in the brain and behavior world, these are the big three that I will talk about till I retire and I can't talk anymore. I tell people this: you think about your child to find solutions. It's people that make the difference, not programs. We have to start making the difference. We can get programs to help us give ideas and to utilize, but it's not the programs that fix the kids. It's people that help our kids. And so the 3 must-haves, and this goes back to the foundation of brain development, brain maintenance, and brain strengthening. The 3 must-haves the human brain has to have is play, nature, and talking. These are the big 3. So let me break it down this way. From birth to age 6, every single child has to have play, nature, and talking as the top 3 priorities in their life. The more they play, the more they're outside, and the more they get to converse and talk, the stronger their brain development is going to be. From birth to age 6, these 3 areas have the strongest toehold on developing the young brain. The more they do it, the stronger the brain is going to be and the more well-developed the brain is going to be. From 6 to 19, which is all the rest of our school age kids, all the way through high school, from age 6 to 19, that's like 1st grade through 12th grade and even on into early college. Our kids have to have these 3 things to the highest degree still. The more they play, the more they're outside, and the more they talk and converse, the stronger those synapses that they've created in the early years get. And the stronger those synapses get, the quicker their brains can process, the quicker they can analyze information, the quicker they can attach and learn new information. And so it's vital for them, play, nature, and talking. Now, here's the kicker. Let's leave children off and let's go to us adults. Us adults sitting here in this Zoom room tonight. The more you play, the more you're outside, and the more you talk and converse, the better the maintenance of your brain will be throughout your lifetime. If you let play, nature, or talking, if you let any of those 3 go in your lives, your brain will deteriorate quicker. Your brain will have a bigger or a harder time trying to maintain itself. Just phenomenal stuff to look at. Play, by the way, #1 by a long shot. If you look at nature, there's some numbers beside nature. Let me share with you real quick. It's not a math problem, so you math people or people who don't like math, don't freak out. 1,440 is the number of minutes in a 24-hour day. So 1 full day, 1,440 minutes. 210 is the recommended number of minutes all school-age kids should be outside every day. 210 minutes, roughly 3.5 hours for optimal brain development and brain strengthening. Children should be outside 3 to 3.5 hours a day. 1,370 is in the United States of America. The average number of minutes our school-age kids spend indoors is 1,370. Roughly 95% of their day is spent indoors. In the United States of America, children are only outside on average 70 minutes a day, which is 1/3 of what's needed for brain development and brain strengthening. And so my challenge is this, and it's a simple challenge because there's something else for my adults there too. Adults, you should be outside about 2 hours a day. If you stay inside, and I'll be honest with you right now, I'm seeing a lot of adults not going outside because of fear. I'm scared to go outside. I'm scared to leave my little area here because of the COVID issues and everything else going on. And I get it. The fear is real. Protect yourself, take precautions, but get yourself outside. #1, being outside is actually safer, it's healthier. But #2, it allows that maintenance and that calming mechanism of your brain to kick in. And so just some things to think about. Movement, we have to move. Everything from the neck down is the motor for the neck up. And so I always tell people, one of the most vital aspects of learning and behavior, and we have researched this to the teeth. You want better learning and you want better behavior outcomes, better social emotional outcomes, movement has to be there. Movement is one of the most vital aspects for learning and behavior. Yet we still don't seem to pay attention to it. Sit quiet, sit still, sit forever. Sit in front of the TV for 3 hours or sit in a desk for a couple of hours. That doesn't work for the human brain to learn. It's one of the worst things. The longer I sit still, the worse it gets for me to learn. And so more movement equals better learning, better behavior, better health, and better outcomes for not just our students, but for all of us. And there's been a research by John Rady, and you can look it up, it's great, that exercise is the single best thing we can do for our brains in terms of learning, mood, and memory. And so it's an interesting thing to look at. There's a study that was done here at UT Southwestern, just in my backyard here. It was a study done over a period of a few years, and they took a couple of groups who did cardiovascular exercise and a couple of groups who didn't. And the cardiovascular, the people who did aerobic exercise, walking, running, jogging, just aerobic type of exercises, found that just doing it for 10 minutes increased the blood flow to their brain by 47%. And it was the memory part of the brain that it got increased. And so the aerobic exercise group, after 10 to 15 minutes of aerobic exercise, increased their ability for memory application, and test scores by 46%. That's huge. And I'm going to tell you, we have this thing called the STAR test in the state of Texas. And I apologize, but I taught pre-K and K, and I'm phonetic. And they got 2 A's in that word, and I pronounce it as such. The STAR test. We have kids sitting for an enormous amount of time. Think about it. If we could work out, and I really would love to talk to the state a little more about this. I'm working on it. That allow our kids to get up about every 20 minutes and move for 5 minutes at least and sit back down. That 46% increase is going to be vital to these test scores that everybody looks for. And it's an interesting thing to look at. It's brain science. It's what our brains need to continue to think and process and utilize our memories. And so it's an interesting thing to see. I always tell people, by the way, recess is a must for all students. I'm the person who goes around the state chanting and raging that all kids in all schools need to have recess. Even us adults have to have recess. The question I put down there, would you consider 5 recesses a day? I bring this up because I do work back home in Canada. I still go fly back home to Canada. I also actually work over in Vietnam. And I haven't been able to get over there because of COVID, but as soon as restrictions leave, I'm going back over there for a while to do some work. But I've also worked in like Mexico and Hong Kong. And I'm going to tell you, I bring that up because I see other countries and how they do it. And I have to tell you, we have lots to learn in our country. It isn't just about test scores and grades. There's a whole lot of stuff that help with the learning and the academics that we need to look at differently. And it helps with our stress and our trauma and the emotions we go through. And so I say, would you consider 5 recesses a day? Because I'll share the story real quick. Some folks back in Canada, in Alberta, contacted me back in August. And they're like, we are worried about our teachers. We're worried about our parents, but they had some mental health things set up for parents up there. But the teachers are worried because the teachers are stressing out. And they're like, what do we do? How do we do this? What do we do for our kids? Because if our teachers are stressed out, parents are stressed out, kids are stressed out. And we talked about it. And so most schools up there already, we have elementary and high school. So elementary is pre-K through 8. High school is 9 through 12. That's our school system. So pre-K through 8, the elementary, usually have 3 to 4 recesses a day already. They have them about 20 minutes each. And so our big brainstorm was, hey, why not for the first part of the year, do 5 recesses a day? Give them an extra 20 minutes to just get out and move, which they did. So think about it. 5 recesses, 20 minutes each. That's 100 minutes of recess a day that they had. By the way, the caveat to that was the teachers had to go play and do something for at least 2 of those recesses. They couldn't sit on the sidelines or do whatever. They took turns rotating and having duty at recess while the other teachers got to go play. And they had to pick at least 2. Last I heard, they've kept it going even into this part of the year. And they said it's been a great thing for them. They've seen great increases in less stress, less trauma. The academics are still staying where they need to stay. They said teachers are happier. They're kind of begrudging to go play technically for recess, but they said once the teachers embraced it, they said it was just all over. They said it's just a whole different ballgame. So just something to think about. Some cool stuff that other people are doing. These are just some things parents and teachers. I gave you this ultimate brain workout because if you take a look, instead of kids, when I was a principal and when I taught pre-K and K, none of my kids ever missed recess. I know, it's just my preference. Because usually the kids who miss recess actually need it more than the other kids do. So what I would do is we use therapeutic recess. We'd look at what are the areas that this particular kiddo is struggling with the most. And we found out which part of the brain needs the workout. And we'd take recess as a time to put in skills and drills and activities that honed in on that part of the brain to make it smart, to make it stronger. It was a great benefit for us. When I was principal, I continued it on to into my school. If you want to freak out a bunch of teachers in elementary, tell them no kid can miss recess. I thought I had a mutiny on my hand when I first started, but we did the therapeutic recess. We met with teachers, talked about each kiddo, what areas of the brain they needed, and we put activities in place. Wasn't a perfect system. I mean, we still had some problems here and there, but it was a good benefit to a lot of our kids. So that was just something we looked at. These are just some things that play does for us. I know I'm running out of time, so bear with me. I just want to get you guys some good information here. Play does all of this. It's amazing what play does for our brain. I can't even, where it says so much more, the list is about 30 or 40 items long. What play alone does to our brain and to our kids' brains. Nature, we already talked about a lot of this, but let me share something with you right now. Walking outside, as soon as your body hits the outside world, your stress immediately lowers, whether you think you feel it or not. As soon as your body leaves the indoors and steps to the outside, there's an instant lowering of your stress. And then if you go outside, sit under a tree, touch a plant, or interact with plants, it'll exponentially lower your stress. And so kind of cool stuff. Talking and socializing, we are social. Even those of us who are introverted. I always joke with people, I am the shyest person you will ever meet outside of me doing this. I have a hard time with the social side of the world, but I still have to be social. We all have to be social. Those who are more social actually have stronger brains. If you continue to be social at whatever level you're comfortable with, it actually helps keep the cognitive impairments at bay, and it protects us from dementia. So interestingly enough, but it's also a good way to de-stress and bring that stress level down. So real quick for our kids, connection and belonging, especially at this time now in our lives with all the stress going on, all the things going on, our kids need to have some sort of connection and belonging, mostly with their parents. And I'm going to tell you parents, I'm going to share some research with you here in a second. I share it with all parents because in the world we live in, it's way too easy for us to become disengaged and disconnected. We get on our phones and we don't talk to our kids. I call it the shopping cart syndrome, where I'll walk into Walmart or Target, and instead of talking and conversing with children, parents are putting a phone in front of them or an iPad in front of them just so they can go get shopping done. Restaurants, I see families sitting down, giving their kids these, so it's all quiet and peaceful. That is not healthy at all. Number one, the worst thing it's for is the connection and belonging between you and that child. And so parents, you're number one. Teachers out there, my educators out there, you're number two. Parents are the most important adult. Teachers, you tend to be number two in most studies. And so that connection and belonging, how do I belong here? How are we connected to each other is absolutely vital for the development and social development of our kids. What we're seeing is because of electronics and because of the disconnection we tend to see sometimes, there's been an increase in this stuff called narcissism. So if I'm a child and my parent gives me a phone instead of taking time to talk to me, or, passes off, or I say, mom, guess what? And you're like, just a minute, honey, hold on, I've got to finish this. And it gets kind of sent off and disengaged. More that happens, the more likely a child can form narcissistic tendencies, which means when they come to school and they're asked to do something, they are breaking down. They are having behavior issues. They are losing their minds. They are not doing well. And I see a lot of people will look for like, oh my goodness, it might be autism. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if it's autism, but it might be narcissism. And we're seeing a lot of this out there right now. And it's just something to think about. Parents, I'm not telling you to be in your kid's face every minute of the day, because that is not healthy either. Find the balance. And when you have the opportunity to interact, don't pass it by, especially the adolescents. Please, please, please. I know we talk so much about early intervention, and I am all about early intervention, but we're missing the adolescent intervention times too. And so these are things that I just want to share with you. This is some information about behavior. what happens is our kids learn to outsource their behaviors to iPads, to computers, to things like that. And we know it's a problem when your child starts losing their cool and they're really having a hard time and you say, here, just take your iPad, and they immediately quiet down. They're outsourcing their behavior to that object, which means they're learning that the only way I know how to calm down is to get this. No one's actually teaching me how to calm down myself. You're relying on something to calm me down. And so the only time I'll calm down is when I see that thing or that person. It might be another person. Oh, they only behave for their uncle. Then that uncle is who they're outsourcing their behavior to. We see it in school sometimes that a child will tear everybody up, but will calm themselves down and get in line for that one person, that one teacher. They're outsourcing their behavior to that one teacher. We're needing to teach our kids how to do it themselves now. We know they can do it, but how do we teach them to not need this, but to do it in here? And so something I'll share with you is when you go about to start teaching that to our kids, when you go about starting to teach your child any new behaviors, anything to deal with behavior or social emotional, let me break this down to you. It takes roughly 1,500 to 5,000 plus times of us working with them before that behavior or that social emotional skill can be something they might do by themselves. Let me say that again, 1,500 to 5,000 times. Welcome to the world of behavior, and welcome to why it's so hard. Behavior is really easy until we intervene, and it's usually because it takes so long is where we lose a lot of adults. Changing behavior in human beings, I can't get into it tonight, but it is fascinating what has to happen up in our brain before our behaviors change. It is wildly difficult for the human brain to change its behaviors, which is why it takes about 1,500 to 5,000 times. So one last thing to ponder, whoever spends the most genuine time with the child will be the one who forms the foundation and attachment with the child. Parents, you're number one. Teachers, you're number two. My favorite thing to tell people is the amount of time and effort you put into the relationship with the child is the effort and time you expect to get back. And so that's just the easy way to do it. One of my favorite quotes by Plato, I'll let you guys read it here real quick. I know I'm running out of time. I'm going to wrap this up quick. Strong brain exercises. I'll go through these quick. 8 years ago, we started research on this back in Canada. We carried it over into Vietnam, and they're just simple, quick brain exercises that help strengthen the synapses in the brain. By doing these exercises, it isn't just a huge benefit to academics. It's not just a huge benefit to behavior. It's also a huge benefit into my emotional regulation. And so there's simple 20-second activities. You do them as many times a day as you can, have fun with them, and just enjoy them. And so I'm going to do one with you guys right now because you've been sitting there listening to me for way too long now. And if you guys haven't moved yet, I'm going to be worried about you. So first one we're going to do is this. What I want you to do is just put your hand out in front of me, point at me with your index finger. And I want you to rotate your index finger clockwise. I can't see you. I'm just trusting you're doing it. And so rotate your finger clockwise. As you're rotating your finger clockwise, try and rotate your wrist at the same time counterclockwise. That's it. That's it. Just do it that amount of time. If you did it for about 10 seconds, your brain is going to be lit up like a Christmas tree. All of your brain, which means those synapses are getting a workout and going to the gym. And so that's what these strong brain activities are. I put some in here for you guys to have. Parents, have a blast, do them at home. Teachers, have a blast, do them at school. Do them as much as you can. It's phenomenal at how much they will strengthen those synapses in the brain, which leads to better processing, which leads to better behavior and emotional regulation, which leads to better learning outcomes. And so there's another one called flip out. And ironically, balance. Our ability to balance has telltale signs on whether we have a strong or a weak brain. So you can look at some balance things that you can do. The stronger your balance, the stronger your brain. In order for us to balance, it takes about 7 different parts of our brain to simultaneously work together so we don't lose our balance and tip over. Massive thing to look at in regards to learning. And so here's what I leave you with. Life isn't about how you manage plan A. It's about how you cope with plan B as you create plan C. Welcome to the COVID world. And what I put in here, just some resources for you. Parents, these are mostly for parents, but teachers are great for you too. Support for teachers affected by trauma, also a good thing for parents. If you've had a lot of trauma, you're really struggling getting over it, it's a support area to go that helps you go through it a little bit better. Alberta Family and Wellness, I helped make this website for up in Alberta. It's for families. Families can go here, get information on things to do for your child's brain, trauma, mental health, everything you need. It's all up there. These are some books for you to read if you're ever interested. Some great books that you know have great information for all of us and all the things that we're going through right now, especially if we're really struggling with the trauma and really struggling with that stress. Just some good books for you to read. My favorite at the top, Parents and Teachers, Kids These Days. Oh, it's one of the best books I've read on kids in a long time. Gives you a lot of insight into our children. So just some stuff for you guys to look at. As I leave you tonight, I know I have one more video. I apologize for running over time, but I got to leave you guys with this video. There's been struggles out there. I understand in your area, there's been a lot of struggles too. A lot of hard times. There's a lot of things that we got to deal with in life and a lot of things that just day to day, we just got to keep going and move to the next day. And so my advice to everyone right now is this: don't let yesterday affect too much of today. I know we can't drop everything that happened in the past, but try not to let it pull up too much of today. Live today, do the best we can today, and we'll just do better tomorrow. And so I leave you with this. What are the two most important days in a human being's life? Number one is our birthday, the day we were born. That's the number one most important day of our lives as human beings. Number two is this. It's when I find purpose. The day I'm born is great, but when I find purpose and what I'm going to do in this life and how I'm going to do this life, that's the second most important day. Why am I here? Why am I on this earth, and what am I going to do with the time I got here? And so as I leave you, I'm going to leave you with this last video to say goodbye, and then I'll sign off as soon as the video is done. So here you go.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. In fact, I have a new web series out called Michael Jr. Break Time. We probably just did the 6th episode. It's on YouTube. So every single Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode on YouTube of Michael Jr. Break Time. What it is it's me. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's, you know, it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm gonna show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor, you know, can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened at the last episode of Michael Jr.'s Break Time. Check it. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying?
All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved like me. I once was lost, but now, right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. Let's go. Now,
Okay. Here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
So for everybody out there, our why is our kids. It's also us. Take care of yourselves, take care of your kids. And I have so many favorite quotes, but this one always makes me smile. Whatever you're doing today, do it with the confidence of a 4-year-old in a Batman t-shirt. As my grandpa used to tell me, everybody, in the end, everything is okay. And if it's not okay, we're just not at the end yet. So just keep going. And anything I can ever do to help you guys, you just let me know. So that's all I got. I apologize for running over time. Did the best I could. I always have way more than I should, but hopefully it's okay. So.
Thank you, Dr. Pethick. That was excellent. Thank you for all the strategies and the interventions. And at this time, that concludes the presentation. But for the next 30 minutes, we will have Dr. Pethick on standby to answer any questions. And we will also have our counselors. So we will be breaking out into breakout session rooms. So if you want to ask a question, what we're going to ask you to do is if you'll, in the chat box, if you'll go to the chat box, type in your screen name and the campus grade counselor that you would like to speak with. Or if you want to speak with Dr. Pethick, you can put your screen name and just type in Dr. Pethick and we will get you into a breakout room. So again, thank you so much for that presentation. It was awesome. And then also I'd like to give a shout out to our counselors. You guys are amazing. We truly appreciate everything that you do for our students, for our teachers, for our schools.